Don Bacon is a Republican congressman and member of the House Armed Services Committee. Welcome to our program, Congressman Bacon.
Thank you very much for having me on.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said that he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Kit Kellogg, Trump's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, will seek a ceasefire in Ukraine as soon as possible. And my first question is, do you believe that Trump is able to end this war after his inauguration?
I really don't know. I know this, that it's in America's national security interest, Ukraine to remain independent. We have to stand up to the bully, Russia, who's invading, an innocent neighbor. I believe President Trump, what he said is that if Putin does not agree to a ceasefire or stop the fighting, that he'll provide all kinds of weapons to Ukraine, much more than we've done in the past. So he's letting Putin know you need to make a deal, or it's going to get worse. Also, I would say Gerald Kellogg is a very good guy. He's one of the better leaders that we could put in this situation. So that gives me confidence that President Trump is sincere in wanting to help out Ukraine. I've always wanted him to be more clear, though, and have more moral clarity who's at fault. This is all on Putin, this entire war. And I find sometimes he's a little ambiguous about that, and we shouldn't be. This is Putin's invaded an innocent country. He's committing war crimes against Ukrainians. And America has a leadership role here to help Ukraine win.
From your perspective, how can Donald Trump force Putin to a negotiation table if Kremlin declines any kind of possibility of ceasefire? Because today Kremlin officially declines any kind of a ceasefire in Ukraine. Do you feel that Trump have enough leverage on Vladimir Putin to force him to end this war, or at least reach any kind of a ceasefire deal on appropriate terms for Ukraine?
Well, it's no doubt that Putin has his own will, and we're going to have to break his will. And you break his will by providing Ukraine high-tech weapons, lots of weapons. You also go after Russia's economy. I think we should be confiscating their assets that are in Europe and America. We need to stop his energy exports, which means America should be producing more energy to undercut his energy. And so there's a lot of tools that we can use to help break Putin's will, and that's what we got to do. This is unacceptable. We should be doing everything right now to do this. It shouldn't have to wait till President Trump comes in. My criticism of President Biden is he's done too little, too late in this fight, which has created gridlock, and it's resulted in too many Ukrainians losing their lives. So I think we should put all the tools on the table and help break Putin's will.
President Biden also has allowed Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia with US-made missiles. From your perspective, is there a chance of Donald Trump reversing this decision before or after the beginning of negotiations? And don't you think that President Trump can use this decisions, these long-range strikes inside Russia, to put even more pressure on Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, I agreed with President Biden removing this restriction. Fact is, he should have done it a year ago, though. Again, too little, too late. But he gets to the right spot eventually. And I hope President Trump does not remove this or take back this decision. Let Ukraine hit military targets that are in Russia. Now, so for example, Russian airfields are striking Ukrainian cities, but we should be bombing those airfields or allowing Ukraine to do that. And so I do think this gives Trump more leverage in negotiations, but it's something that Ukraine is needed for self-defense.
Also, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte warns Donald Trump of dire threat to the United States. If Ukraine pushed into a bad peace deal with Russia, what are the risks of that?
Well, we shouldn't force Ukraine into a bad deal. And so I will be a Republican, but I'm only one guy, out of 435 in the House, one out of 535 in Congress. But I'll be vocal in defending Ukraine. We want an independent sovereign Ukraine that wants democracy, that wants free markets, wants rule of law. That's why I so respect the Ukrainian people. They're trying to chart a different path that's different than what Russia is doing, but Russia finds it unacceptable. They want to force Ukraine to be like them, and they want to be part of the West. And I think that's a very noble desire, and the United States should support that. And so we can't force Ukraine into a bad deal either. And so that would be my position of President Trump. I mean, I don't know what exactly he'll do. I can't, I don't have a crystal ball here. But the right thing to do is to force Putin to negotiate by going after him economically, militarily, with the weapons we provide Ukraine, shut off his trade as much as we can, confiscate his assets, and make it too painful for him to continue this war.
Do you expect U.S. Congress to influence Trump's foreign policy, also regarding Ukraine?
Well, President Trump was elected as the president. He is largely in control of foreign policy. However, the Congress has a role here. We have a vote, and if the president has no support from Congress on these decisions, I think he'll back off. I think he's saying the right things, though, and I think he's going to try to get this war ended on terms that President Zelensky and Ukraine will like. That's what I'm hearing. We'll have to see how this plays out. And I think having General Kellogg being the primary guy that President Trump is using, that's a good sign as well. He's a smart guy. I think he supports the Ukrainian position very well. He knows that Russia is a bad actor. Putin's a bad actor. And so I think that we have the right person here that will help with these negotiations.
Also, and what is your assessment of foreign policy views of Pete Hegseth, the Fox News anchor who should become the next U.S. Defense Secretary, and also Mike Waltz, President Trump's future national security advisor? What is your take on their positions on Ukraine?
I think Mike Waltz early on was very supportive of sending weapons to Ukraine. I think he's backed off recently. However, his most latest statement was that if Russia doesn't stop this war, that we should do very hard economic sanctions and cut off those exports, the things that I was saying. So those recent comments from Mike Waltz is promising. And Pete Hegseth has also, by and large, been supportive of Ukraine. I don't think he supported Biden's policies of doing too little, too late. So he was critical of some of the things that President Biden did. But Mike Waltz, he will definitely be in the White House. He will be a leader on this. It remains to be seen if Pete Hegseth will get support of the Senate. I think it's a bit of an uphill climb for him, but we'll see. And I look forward to listening to what he says in the hearings in the Senate. And I hope that he comes out very supportive of Ukraine in those hearings.
And what is your take on the possibility of the U.S. Senate confirming those nominations for Trump's team? I mean, his nominations to lead U.S. Defense Secretary, Pentagon, and his nomination also to lead U.S. Department of State. Do you expect U.S. Senate to confirm both nominations?
I believe most of the nominations will be supported by the Senate. So, for example, Senator Rubio will be the Secretary of State. I believe he'll be confirmed fairly easily. I believe at least we'll have an easy confirmation process going to the United Nations. I do believe that Pete Hegseth will have an uphill climb in the Senate. I think it's going to be hard, but if he does a good job in the hearings and is able to convince the senators that he's ready to lead, able and ready to lead the Department of Defense, he may be able to do it, but that remains to be seen yet. I think he'll face some hard hearings in the Senate.
Also, yes, President Joe Biden is asking Congress to allocate another $24 billion to support Ukraine next year. However, the White House has submitted this request to the Congress to allocate another $24 billion to Ukraine. Would you vote in favor of such Biden's request, and do you expect House Republicans also to support this maybe the last allocation for Ukraine financial resources for Ukraine's war effort?
I would like to see the details, but on principle, I will support. We need to help Ukraine win this fight. It's in our national security interest that Ukraine prevail and Russia lose in this. And just for the people of Ukraine, I support it. It's a moral obligation, in my view, to help out someone who's being invaded by Putin, where he's committing war crimes. He's bombing Ukrainian cities, going after Ukrainian power generation. He's bombed over 2,000 hospitals and medical facilities. America should stand up to that and help out the country that's being attacked. So just on principle, I support this for Ukraine. But even more strategically, what would happen if Ukraine loses? I would guarantee you that neighboring countries will also be invaded to the west of Ukraine. I think Georgia will be at risk, and possibly the Baltics. And the whole world is watching how we handle this. If we don't stand up to Putin, what will China do with Taiwan, right? And I believe Iran has looked at this and thought, well, okay, we can take advantage of America's, ambiguity here and attack Israel. And so this isn't just about Ukraine, though it's very important for Ukraine. And just for Ukraine, I support it. But we got to think beyond Ukraine as well, that the whole world is watching what's going on here. If we don't do the right thing, it could be a much more unstable and dangerous world environment.
There are lots of discussions about the possibility of Plan B, about does Donald Trump have a Plan B for Vladimir Putin? So if Vladimir Putin declines any kind of a peace offer from Trump, what would happen next from your perspective? And does the Trump's team have a Plan B for such scenario?
Well, I'm not President Trump. I'm not in his administration, so I really don't know. However, we have heard that if the President Putin does not seriously get involved and stop this war, that President Trump says he's going to double down on weapons to Ukraine, double down on economic sanctions against Russia, and try to cut off his trade. If we can increase our natural gas production in America and drive the prices down on gas, that will have a very hard impact on Russia's war-making capabilities. The ruble is already crashing, right? The Russia's had to intervene to stop the ruble from crashing, so they froze it. I think the Russia's economy is on the edge of just collapsing, and America should push it over the edge. There should be deep pain felt by every Russian because of this war with Ukraine. And so I believe that President Trump will double down if Russia does not stop this war.
Does it mean that Russia cannot sustain this war for another years, from your perspective, for another year or two?
Well, the Russian mindset is different than much of the West. They've already suffered 730,000 casualties. I'll say that again, 730,000 casualties is the latest numbers I have on Russian losses. Russian leadership, they don't seem to care about people. Right? They don't care how many people they put in the meat grinder. And so their sense of pain is different than what we're willing to do for our people. We believe in protecting our citizens. And I worry that a war of attrition does not work in Ukraine's favor. That's my view. However, Ukraine's fighting for its life, fighting for its culture, fighting for its language, fighting for its history. And you can see it. But I fear a war of attrition is not good for Ukraine. That's why I think we should do everything we can to try to get this war ended as fast as we can.
And what is your assessment of the current situation on the Middle East? It seems like Vladimir Putin is losing his positions in Syria. Meanwhile, there are lots of protests in Georgia against pro-Russian elements of Georgian government. What is your reaction to this?
Who wants to be allied with Putin? Only thugs. Assad, the Ayatollah Khamenei, President Xi from China, Kim Jong-un from North Korea. All these people are people you wouldn't want to have in your house or friends of your family. And that's who Putin hangs out with. That's who he's allied with. And he is taken some losses. What happened in Syria is surely a shot, or it's a bad thing for his reputation and his area of influence there. It is possible he may have to pull all of his forces out of Syria. We'll see. The folks who are winning this fight in Syria, they're not that good in their own right. They're, Islamic extremists, and I don't think will be allies of the United States or Israel or Ukraine. However, it's good to see Assad go. If at all possible, we need to see him gone. He's sacrificed a big percentage of the Syrian population in this fight just to maintain his power. He should have been gone a long time ago. And what you're seeing in Georgia is people like Ukrainians who don't want to be dominated by the Kremlin. They want democracy. They want free markets. They want rule of law. They want to be allied with the West, where people have dignity and are treated as individuals and precious as individuals. And so they're making a statement. We don't want to be part of the Russian sphere of influence. And I don't blame them. Who would want to be part of that?
And what do you expect from Donald Trump on his policy regarding Iran, China, and North Korea?
Well, I think President Trump's policy on Iran when he was a president 4 years ago was very clear. He put on maximum pressure on Iran. He had their economy in terrible shape. He had his foot on the neck of the Iranian leadership. He had froze most of their exports and had them economically and diplomatically isolated. And then President Biden comes in and removes that. I thought it was wrong. When you remove pressure from Iran and allow them to trade, that money goes to terrorists. It goes to Hezbollah. It goes to Hamas. It goes to the Houthis in Yemen. And I believe that the behavior of the current president has facilitated or enabled what has happened in the Middle East so drastically terrible, with the Hamas attack on 7 October, the Hezbollah attacks on Israel. And you see Iran launching hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel. That tells me that they don't fear America, and we've lost deterrence. I believe President Trump's going to restore deterrence when it comes to Iran. But Kim Jong-un, I'm not sure, there's not a lot of easy answers because they're so economically isolated already. Their only lifeline is Russia and China. Their people are some of the poorest people on earth. And so I'm not sure how Trump will respond to Kim Jong-un, but we just got to realize he's another dictator. He's the grandson of a dictator or son of a dictator. And the poor North Korean people are suffering under that rule.
And what is your take on the possibility of another trade war between the United States and China and other key economies in the world?
Yeah, I'm not interested or keen on having a trade war. I believe in free trade, but it's got to be fair trade. And so we know this, that China is not a fair trade country. It has very predatory trade practices. The government subsidizes much of their industry, which undercuts American companies because they can't compete when the opposition or the adversary is being funded by the government. So we have to build a fair trade mechanism when it comes to China, and it's not fair right now. But I'm not interested in having a trade fight against, Europe and Mexico and China. I just don't think that America benefits from that. And so we should focus on China. I know the president's also looking at Mexico because we've been having approximately 300,000. Well, we've had about 1 million people enter every year illegally from the border, and that's unsustainable for our country. And Mexico needs to be doing more to help out America's southern border.
Thank you, Congressman Bacon, for your time and for your support for Ukraine, and glory to Ukraine.
We want to see an independent Ukraine that's thriving, economically strong, militarily, strong so that it's not a threat from its neighbor Russia or Belarus. And I look forward to coming out to Ukraine more often. I had a great trip to Ukraine this September, and I hope to come back.
Thank you, Congressman.